Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. You are tuned in to match number 3 in round 3 of the JCSA High School debate competition for 2025. This is, for all intents and purposes, a quarterfinal adjacent match. We say that because we had to bring back two wildcards into the competition based on their performance. This, ladies and gentlemen, really does show you the caliber of teams that we have facing off each other in this competition. I am Ravon Thomas Matthews, and for the purposes of this match, I will be your cheer judge. Of course, joining me on my panel are two other amazingly qualified judges who will ask to introduce themselves, starting with Miss Sonique Martin.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope your day has been going well. I'm Sonique Martin, one of your wing adjudicators. And for all purposes of this match, let me tell you the motion. So the motion that we see Knox College in proposition facing off against St. Jago High in opposition is this house believes that trade unions should prioritize future-oriented benefits, for example, pensions and training, rather than immediate wage increases for their workers.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Sonique. And of course, your other judge for today, Jason Williams.
Good afternoon, everyone. Lovely to be here. I'm one of the wing adjudicators. Looking forward to hearing all of the substantives and everything that everyone will share today, and I'm wishing both teams all the best.
Thank you very much. Of course, we would not be here today debating the JCSA debates without our project owners and good friends over at the Jamaica Civil Service Association. And so we want to take this opportunity to give them a big thanks. In fact, this competition was scheduled to end during Civil Service Week in 2025. Unfortunately, due to one atrocious Hurricane Melissa, we had to postpone the competition. But we are delayed but not denied. In fact, several of the teams in this competition would have suffered from Hurricane Melissa in through devastation and lack of access, and yet still they find it worthwhile to be here to debate this motion. And so it is with great joy that I'd like to hear from these schools. We invite the Knox College team to introduce themselves.
Hello, can you hear us? All right, so I am Sharon Smith. I'll be the first speaker this match. And we have with us the second speaker, Jaden Stevenson, and third speaker, Summer Alice.
All right, there we go. Sharian, Jaden, and Summer. And of course, their opponents coming from St. Jago High School. Let's hear from you. We invite you to introduce yourselves.
My name is Safia Omili, and I'll be serving as first opposition speaker. My second speaker is Jonna Tomlinson, and the third speaker will be Anna Governor.
All right, there we go. Safia, Jana, and Anna Governor. Governor. My apologies. Yes. And so, ladies and gentlemen, with all that said, let us get into the format of this debate. This debate will be governed by the Jade parliamentary format. And this is a unique format of debating because it introduces two cross-examinations. But let's start from the top. So first speakers, you will have 7 minutes to present your case. Second speakers, you will have 6 minutes. And the third and final speakers from each team will have 5 minutes to present their case. It's important to note that the first and last minute of each speech is considered protected time. And in that time, you'll be protected from points of information. Now, outside of that first and second minute of each speech, you are free to ask points of information and you are free to accept them. And we encourage you to do so. This privilege, however, will not be afforded to the reply speakers who will not be allowed to accept any points of information during their speech. Now, uniquely to the Jade parliamentary format is a period of cross-examination. And don't worry, I'll tell you a little bit more about the cross-examination period when we arrive at that point in the debate. And so, ladies and gentlemen, once more, the motion before us reads, this House believes that trade unions should prioritize future-oriented benefits such as pensions and training rather than immediate wage increases for their workers. With that said, I'd like to officially call this debate to order and invite the first speaker from Knox College to open this debate. The floor is yours, Sharianne Smith.
3, 2, 1. Mr. Speaker, members of this honorable House, allow me to provide the important context for this debate. When we say prioritize, we mean to place higher in the order of business, to give greater strategic emphasis and bargaining weight too. It does not mean to pursue exclusively or to substitute one for the other. It means that on our side, when unions sit at the bargaining table, they should place pension, training, healthcare, and long-term security at the top of their agenda, with wage increases remaining important but secondary. To determine what ought to be prioritized, it is necessary first to examine the purpose of trade unions in the status quo. Firstly, unions are the only institution legally empowered to sit across from employers and compel binding contractual commitments on pensions, training, and healthcare. No other institution can write these protections into employment contracts. Secondly, the government has proven it cannot adequately fill this gap. Interventions are broad and general, designed to serve an entire population with vastly different needs. But trade unions exist specifically to negotiate unique protections for specific workers in particular industries, thereby delivering precise benefits to these workers that no government program could. Mr. Speaker, this established a few things. It is well within a trade union's function and purpose to advocate for social wages that no other entity is incentivized to supply. Secondly, their current focus on immediate wage increases has been massively unsustainable and unrewarding. And thirdly, a shift in focus is necessary because long-term lobbying goals require more work, more bargaining power, and therefore greater prioritization to reap sufficient rewards. Mr. Speaker, our first claim is that focus on urgency will not substantially improve the conditions for these workers. To substantiate this, we have 2 points of mechanization. Firstly, a focus on immediate wage lobbying creates subpar labor conditions. Mr. Speaker, urgency has dominated trade union strategies in Jamaica for decades. The status quo shows that unions have overwhelmingly concentrated their lobbying efforts on securing immediate wage increases rather than future-oriented benefits, such as pensions, training, and healthcare. NIS fund exhausts by 2033, the maximum state pension is $29 US weekly. Obviously, this narrow focus has come at a cost. By focusing on immediate wage gains, unions have neglected structural protections only they can secure. As a result, union membership has stagnated or declined, particularly among young and private sector workers, weakening bargaining power. Workers now see unions as reactive negotiators for short-term relief rather than a driver of lasting economic security. The results of this focus are clear and concerning. Only about 6.2% of Jamaican workers have private pension coverage, leaving more than 93% reliance almost entirely on the national insurance scheme. And we would have established that this is anticipated to reach capacity by 2033. These statistics demonstrate that decades of wage-focused lobbying have failed to secure the structural protections that workers need. By prioritizing immediate wages, the opposition's approach keeps workers trapped in survival mode, addressing only short-term needs, while leaving long-term security unprotected, not accepted. Jamaica is particularly vulnerable to inflation for several reasons, including the fact that it is a small open economy that imports roughly 70% of its goods, many of which are basic necessities and raw materials required for further products such as food. This makes domestic prices extremely sensitive to global price shocks, such as rising oil costs or disruptions in supply chains. The impact of these vulnerabilities on workers is evident. Food inflation alone reached 8.1% in December 2024, while costs for utilities also climbed significantly. Nominal wages may rise, but these increases are quickly eroded by inflation, leaving real purchasing power fragile. As a result, workers do not experience meaningful improvements in living standards. They face not merely low income, but structural economic insecurity that persists despite repeated wage gains. The consequences of prioritizing immediate wage increases are not just abstract numbers, they are lived experiences for Jamaican workers. When wage rises slightly, but inflation eats them away, unions waste bargaining power on repeated short-term campaigns. Imagine hotel housekeepers earning minimum wage. A raise might briefly allow them to buy a little more food. By the end of the month, rent, transportation, and groceries consume almost every extra dollar. They are forced to negotiate for yet another raise next year, trapped in a cycle of survival rather than progress. This reactive focus leaves countless Jamaicans facing the same daily struggle. Young workers remain stuck in low-skill jobs with no training opportunities. Mid-career employees cannot move up because there are no structured skill pathways, and retirees rely on a maximum NIS pension of just 29 US dollars per week, far from enough to cover housing, utilities, food, and healthcare. Opposition's approach, focused on immediate relief, keeps workers living paycheck to paycheck, vulnerable at every stage of life, while structural protections that could guarantee long-term security remain unclaimed. Mr. Speaker, our stance is more feasible or limited bargaining power. 2 points of mechanization from us. Firstly, this form of lobbying is more secure for workers. Wage increases are typically structured as annual or periodic cost adjustments. Employers may accommodate moderate increments because such increases can be absorbed, offset through pricing adjustments, or revisited in subsequent negotiations. Long-term pension contributions, by contrast, represent institutionalized liabilities. Once embedded in contracts, they create ongoing financial commitments that extend well beyond a single bargaining cycle. Consider, Mr. Speaker, that a wage increase provides value that ceases when employment ceases. Pension contribution, however, becomes an appreciating asset. When contribution begins early, for example, at the age of 25, compounding over 40 years multiplies value significantly. The asset survives inflationary cycles, employment transitions, and ultimately sustains retirement. Employers also are more accepting of this form of lobbying. Trained and structured skill development increases productivity. Productivity growth supports sustainable wage growth without investment.
Indeed, and thank you very much. That was first speaker from Knox College, Sharian Smith. At this point in time, we're going to invite the first speaker from the team in opposition, St. Jago High School. That speaker, of course, being Sophia O'Mealy.
Are you hearing me?
Indeed, ready when you're ready, Sophia.
Okay. After 2, 1, 2. Esteemed adjudicators, timekeepers, and side proposition, good day. I come before you to present on the motion. This House believes that trade unions should prioritize future or intended benefits, examples pension, training, rather than immediate wage increases for their workers. We agree with the definition of prioritize, but the side proposition fails to define the word immediate. Immediate means happening now or in the very short term. means in this motion affecting workers' current income and living conditions. With this, we restate the motion to be trade unions should focus first on helping workers survive right now rather than on benefits they may or may not receive in the future. Before I get into the meat of the matter, I will start with my rebuttals. I am so happy that you stated that pension is not enough, because it is not enough and we need to focus on right now. And we're in our world, we're saying that we can build both the present and the future. In your world, it is uncertain, and the purchasing power of the money that they get as pension probably is not enough. You also stated that persons leave the trade unions because they're not getting enough pensions. No, they're not getting enough wages, and that's what we're trying to prioritize right here.
Points of information.
It's not first minute. Your first speakers are disagreed that inflation is still eroding wage benefits, and we're stating that if we increase the wages every year, the purchasing power, as in the amount they can, the money that they gain, and the value of the money that they have can increase. Also, you have not explained. They have not explained how short-term wages increase are sustainable. We argue that it is because firstly, both parties must come into an agreement. In order to win this debate, the proposition must prove that future benefits like pensions or training yields more benefit to the workers than workers being able to survive today. We already know that it is impossible. Workers are facing rising costs right now, and promises for the future cannot pay today's bills. Our second speaker will poke holes in the proposition's arguments and introduce a new point and further support our case. Our third speaker will provide a full rebuttal showing clearly why immediate wages increases are the best and most practical choice. Judges, side proposition is living in a dream world where the future is guaranteed. They want to offer a retirement plan to a man who is being evicted today. We are opposition, and we move that trade unions must prioritize immediate wage increases. Our stance benefits both the present
Points of
and the
information.
future, not accepted, while theirs relies on a future that is completely uncertain. A trade union's job is to protect all the members in its members' economic and work life, and by extension, their mental health. The clash today is simple. Do we give workers the cash they need to survive and invest in themselves, or do we let the unions lock that money away in promises that might disappear? The problem is not that pensions and or training are bad. The problem is priority. In a world of 70% food inflation and rising taxi fares, a future benefit is a luxury that functions as a death sentence for the present. We believe
Points
that
of
by
information.
putting accepted.
Okay, so you're operating in the same time frame as us. It takes you 2 to 3 years for these wage increases to actually be like absorbed or realized under your world. Same time frame.
Okay. We're saying that when I get into my speech, you will hear what I was saying. Also, your speaker was saying that training helps to move up the structural ladder. No, it does not. Just because you train persons to be an officer doesn't mean they're going to be an officer. Not everybody can be an officer in the workforce. We believe that putting money in a worker's pocket now, we secure both there today and there tomorrow. Immediate wage increases are a primary good that solve present poverty while also building future wealth. Think of a wage increase as a foundation. According to Rawls' difference principle, we must judge a policy by how it affects the least advantaged. The worker at the bottom. When a teacher or a nurse gets more money in their paycheck, today they don't just waste it. They use it to pay off high interest debt, fix a broken car so they can get to work cheaper, or cover urgent household expenses. By addressing these needs now, the worker actually saves money
Points
and
of information.
not accepted. Side proposition wants to give them a pension promise, but if the worker falls into debt today just to eat or pay rent, that future pension will be eaten up by interest and bills long before they retire. Our stance gives workers the tool to secure their present and their future, while theirs hands them a certificate as their house collapses around them. Future-oriented benefits are soft promises that can be easily broken by inflation or government budget costs. As this answers your question, I'll get into it when it reaches that part. In Jamaica, prices for goods and gas rise every year. If a union negotiates for training or future pension plan, these benefits are subject to government discretion and fiscal policy. Fiscal policy, this answers the question how government spends and earns money. Future-oriented benefits are part of how government spends money, and if they're in a budget deficit, which means government spending is greater than tax revenue, the government will decrease their spending to return the budget to a balanced
Points of
budget.
information.
That means that they will decrease the percentage of pension to their workers. Furthermore, we must be blunt. Pensions are stagnant. They are fixed amounts that do not just equate into reality. Meanwhile, inflation is volatile and aggressive. If you prioritize a fixed pension over a wage, you are locking a worker into a future where their income stays while the price of bread flies away. Base pay is the only tool that can be negotiated frequently to match the volatility. It is permanent, taxable, and pensionable. It is hard to take away once it is in contract. Said proposition is offering a bird in the bush while a hurricane inflation is blowing away the bush. We prioritize the bird in hand because it is in an unstable economy, promises alone usually fly away. Workers are rational persons who understand their needs better than a union board that decides for them. Forcing training or pension over wages is paternalistic. It's like a parent who does not trust their child. If a worker receives an extra salary, they can save it, pay for their child's CSEC exams, or invest it as they see fit. When workers get cash in their pockets, they spend it right away on things like food, transport, or daily needs. This spending helps the local economy grow because money moves from one person to person, which helps the circular flow of income because we're in an open economy. Public servants especially tend to spend most of any extra money they get. On the other hand, union offered training programs might not even help them with their day-to-day problems, so the money doesn't have the same impact. Productivity rises while workers' immediate needs are met. According According to efficiency wage theory, a worker stressed about rent or bus fare cannot be productive, regardless of future benefits, or stands to respect the intelligence of workers and empowers them to build their own future, while said a proposition tries to build a future for them that might never fit their lives. Finally, let us make a blunt comparison. Said proposition is trying to build a roof on a house that has no floor. They offer seminars, training, and abstract benefits. We offer supermarket money, cash that feeds families today. They offer uncertainty while we provide liquidity that actually works. Their benefits depend entirely on government decisions as stagnant funds that cannot keep up with Jamaica's cost of living. Our stance addresses the present by stopping the financial bleed and secures the future by raising a baseline
And
for future
that
earnings. You
is
cannot fight for retirement to
time.
see.
That is time. Thank you very much. That was the first speaker from St. Jago High School. At this point in time, we're going to get into that beloved period of the debate that we like to call the cross-examination. Yes? So, for the period of cross-examination, we're going to allow opposition to pose questions to proposition, and of course, proposition to pose questions to opposition. So, opposition, you will have 10 seconds to ask each question, so that's 10 seconds per question, for a total of 3 questions. The team in proposition will have 45 seconds to answer each of those questions. It's important to note that only one individual on the team who is asking the question may do so at any point in time. But for the team who is answering the question, the entire team can chime in to provide a robust response as long as it fits within that 45-second period. After opposition has asked proposition their 3 questions, we'll invite proposition to do the same and ask opposition their 3 questions. Right? So, with the rules and format out of the way, we invite both teams to unmute their mics and invite the first question from team opposition to be posed to team proposition. That is St. Jago High School to Knox College.
How do future-oriented benefits stimulate the local economy if workers cannot spend that money immediately?
Two things. When you're misunderstanding how these wage increases work, you are operating in a similar time frame. 2 to 3 years is the time it will take for you to receive that money in your pocket as a worker. Similarly, the way that these stimulate the economy, the local economy, is by giving you the opportunity to upscale and acquire like livable wages that aren't nominal but real. So you have more real income to spend on goods and services, wide scale as a member of the economy. And this leads to these exact benefits that you're describing on your side. So we co-opt your benefits without these individuals having to also contend with inflation, eating away at the real value of their income over a period of time. Additionally, we ensure that they have larger job security because they're able to train and upscale, thereby securing positions that aren't immediately threatened by AI and automation.
Team St. Jago, your second question.
Is a worker who is distracted by debt and hungry during their shift more or less likely to be productive than a worker whose immediate bills are paid? And how do you contend that this will benefit the economy in the long run?
Sorry, I didn't hear your full question. Can you repeat it again, please?
Okay. So I'm asking, how is a worker who is distracted by debt and hungry during their shift more or less likely to be productive than a worker whose immediate bills are paid? And then depending on the answer to that, I'm asking as well, in the same question, how is that going to benefit the
Out of
economy in
order.
the long run?
Okay, so 2 points. One being the fact that these people are hungry on the job, that doesn't immediately imply that it's an issue with their wages. It could be for any other personal reason. More importantly, however, on your side, this is a pervasive issue. You're already contending for these wage increases. You already have people supposedly hungry at their jobs and unproductive. So that obviously signifies that there's an issue and there's a need for a pivot on your side. It shows inefficiency, it shows stagnation, and it shows inertia. Long term, to address the second aspect of your question, you consistently like ask questions pertaining to like large scale economic development. However, your side is operating in an economy that is underdeveloped because these workers do not have robust incomes, like real incomes, to allocate towards their needs sustainably. So on your side, you're seeing less economic development. On our side, you're seeing upscaling in skills and training. People are able to occupy better positions. People are able to like develop their
That
skills and
is time
products
for
because
your
they're mentally
answer.
trained to do so.
And your third and final question, St. Jago.
Can side proposition explain how a worker who is evicted today because they cannot afford their rent is supposed to benefit from a pension 30 years from now?
I'm sorry, can you repeat it, please?
Can side proposition explain how a worker who is evicted today because they can't afford their rent is supposed to benefit from a pension 30 years from now?
Same question to you. How is it that this worker is going to be able to benefit from the wage increase they're going to get 3 years from now? At the very least, to ensure that more workers, specifically the more vulnerable aspects of the economy, these workers who are marginalized, these underemployed youth, these individuals are able to like skill train and occupy positions later on. A pervasive issue in Jamaica's economy, underemployment. We contend with that and we adjust that. You don't. Additionally, pensions are able, these are particular for the aging population of Jamaica that ensure that these aging individuals who are consistently without a pension are better secured in the long term. We have both of those on our side. You don't have that.
All right, and thank you. At this point in time, we're going to flip the arrangement, yes, and invite team proposition rather, to pose your questions to team opposition. So Knox, your questions to St. Jago.
Okay. How do you contend with the fact that all of the wage increases or like all of your urgency, it relies on the fact that these people get the money immediately, but they don't in the state. In the status quo, they simply don't because that's not how policy and lobbying works.
First of all, that is simply not even true because in the government sector, it takes at least like 3 months maximum for you to get it. And even then, waiting 2 to 3 years versus waiting your entire lifetime where you have to work longer hours and just work your ass off for a pension that is not going to be sustainable in the long run. Because when you get to that pension time, the money there is fixed and it will not be able to survive that economy that's 25 years down the line.
Okay, how do you contend with the fact that inflation consistently deteriorates the real value of the income that you're providing? I'm sorry, can you hear me?
No, can you repeat that, please?
Okay, if I'm saying this, can you hear me clearly now?
I can.
Okay, so my question is, how do you contend with the fact that inflation consistently depreciates the value of the income you're providing to these individuals, whilst we on proposition give them like sizable skills that ensure that they're sustained long term?
But these sizable skills from the trainings you are saying are not necessarily going to guarantee money in their pocket right now. There's no guarantee that you're going to get the position.
First of all, training does not equate to you having a position. Additionally, the rise in the wages is for real wages. We give them real wages, meaning that it adjusts for inflation. The pension does not adjust for inflation. It is the same, which means the money that they get can only go so far. Back then, you could have used $10 buy a piece of land. Where can you use $10 for today? You can't do that. The pension remains stagnant while inflation is volatile. So that's what we're saying.
Okay, can you explain to us how you believe that real income is valued by giving them like money out of their pockets despite the fact that the economy continues to increase prices thereafter because that's how economies work?
You can ask it in a question format, please.
Yes, I said, how do you contend with the fact that, wait, no, can you explain to us how it is that your side gives a real income despite the fact that that's not how real income works and inflation is an autonomous thing? I'm sorry, did you hear me?
One more time, I'm sorry. One more time, please.
Okay, I'm saying, how do you as opposition contend with the fact that inflation is an autonomous thing that will instantly, regardless of whatever you do, depreciate the value of income? Because that's how inflation works.
Right, and then the same way, once the pensions are fixed or the training courses, there's no guarantee that they're going to benefit or meet inflation where it's at. But wage increases, which happens, as you say, like every 2 to 3 years, every time there needs to be an increase, there's an increase. So that better suits the need for inflation or how inflation is volatile.
Wages is
Indeed.
more volatile than pension.
All right. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes the first period of cross-examination. At this point in time, we are going to invite the second speaker from Knox College, Jaden Stevenson, to extend the case for side proposition.
Hello, hear me?
Yes, ready when you are.
1, 2, 3. The opposition has fundamentally misunderstood how inflation works. Believing you have more money to spend because you gain more is considered as the money illusion. If we grant a 10% wage increase today, that is immediately followed by a 10% rise in consumer prices. Has the has the has the has it really has an increase the work has it really increased the workers' purchasing power, or have it simply fueled the inflation that keeps the worker poor? Mr. Speaker, let us first address the cost of living and the cash policy. The first assumption we must challenge is that cost of living pressures can be solved through wage increases. While higher wages appear practical, they do not create lasting improvement. When wages rise, they are taxed, eroded by inflation, and often offset by price increases as businesses pass on higher labor costs. Raise quick the real value of this raise quickly declines. What seems like relief is often only nominal. Wages are consumed immediately. They do not accumulate or compound. Repeated wage negotiations produce repeated dissatisfaction. Cash in hand is a band-aid, not a solution. Trade unions exist to respond to workers' demands. In times of economic pressure, it is rational for workers to prioritize immediate wage increases. Agency dominates decision making when bills are due and prices are rising. But a union that only mirrors these immediate demands becomes reactive rather than strategic. It grows inert and ineffective. Its role is not simply to demonstrate outcome for the next month. Its role is to maximize the lifetime economic welfare of its members. Outside government, we would have already established this. Workers today face structural vulnerabilities, inflation that erodes real wages, low productivity growth that limits income ceilings, exposure to automation, and weak retirement security. Also, limited upward mobility. Even when wages increase, these vulnerabilities remain. Trade unions themselves face structural challenges. Trade Trade unions historically are designed to protect workers from exploitation, to increase bargaining power, and to secure long-term welfare. Many unions today have been reduced to wage negotiators. These problems are connected. Workers remain insecure, so they demand higher wages. Unions are focused on immediate pay, and productivity does not improve inflation persistence, vulnerability remains. So they must negotiate again, and the cycle continues. The opposition must see that urgency has been unsustainable and ineffective. Trade unions today are depreciating in three measurable ways. One, membership density is falling, particularly among workers and their workers under 35. Number two, private sector unionization remains low. And finally, bargaining power weakens when unions repeatedly negotiate wage increases that inflation quickly observes. Because the public sees unions mobilize, strike, secure raise, and then return to the same dispute 2 years later. Unions look seasonal, not accepted. Unions look seasonal rather than strategic. Young workers notice this. Imagine a 23-year-old graduate entering the workforce on a contract job. She's thinking about employability, career mobility, and whether her skills will remain relevant in 5 years as technology evolves. If the union only negotiates pay raises for current permanent staff, she sees little to no reason to join. Imagine, union negotiate employer-funded certification programs, structured apprenticeships, retraining in digital skills, and portable pension contribution. Union offers tangible value. Specifically, industry recognized certification, which increases employability across firms, and retirement contributions will accumulate from the very first job. Now, that is a union relevant to unemployment youth of Jamaica and a union worth joining. In the long run, we have stronger unions with young, more diverse membership and bargaining power, sustainable institutional growth, and better protection for workers. While the position model is wage-focused union stagnant, membership ages and declines, and workers remain insecure with no reliable means of protecting themselves from institutional abuse. Prioritizing structured training increases productivity and employability. Certified specialized workers are harder to replace. Employers cannot easily substitute them with cheaper labor or automation. This restores structural bargaining power, not performative power. Pension contributions create measurable compounding retirement accumulation. Members see long-term benefits and develop an attachment to the union. Young workers, gig workers, and contract employees are more likely to join an organization, offering career pathways, upward mobility, and retirement security. Increased membership expands union density, strengthens collective bargaining leverage, and enhances political influence. In short, solving workers' long-term insecurity strengthens union survival. Remaining wage focus leads to stagnation, embracing training, pensions, and career benefits modernizes union and restores their relevance. Prioritizing pensions and structured retirement benefits ensures measuring financial dignity for workers after they can no longer earn. Consider a 65-year-old retiree who contributed 35 to 40 years to the economy. Earning kept Earning declines with age, yet life expectancy extends to 20 to 30 years beyond retirement. Expenses for housing, utilities, food, and especially healthcare do not disappear. By negotiating employer-funded pension contributes to 8 to 10% of salary annually. Invested consistently over 30 to 40 years, funds compound and generate predictable monthly income streams. Retirees can afford essentials independently, reducing reliance on family or government assistance. It prevent declines, integrational financial strain lessens, and public welfare pressures are eased. Most importantly, those who contributed to decades to the economy retire with stability and dignity. Now consider employment sustainability in a world of rapid technological change and automation are transforming industries at an unprecedented rate. Customer service calls are partially run by AI. Cashiers are replaced by self-checkout kiosks. Routine data entry and manufacturing tasks are automated. Workers performing repetitive tasks are at a high risk of redundancy. A wage increase, no matter how significant, and at this time, the proposition pauses.
And thank you very much. That was the second speaker from Team Knox College. Yes, Jaden Stevenson. At this point in time, we invite the second speaker from the team in opposition. That is St. Jago High School. Uh, Jana Tomlinson, the floor is yours.
Trade unions should focus first on helping workers survive right now rather than on benefits that they may or may not receive in the future. This debate is not about whether pensions and training are beneficial. They are. This debate is about priority under pressure. And when workers are struggling to survive the present, asking them to sacrifice immediate income for uncertain future promises is not strategic. It is detached from reality. Today, I will do three things: rebut the core logic of the proposition, deepen and reinforce the principles established by my first speaker, and provide my own substantive arguments. Firstly, the proposition claims that future-oriented benefits create long-term stability. This sounds responsible, it sounds strategic, but it ignores a fundamental economic truth. There is no long-term stability without short-term survival. Stability is not an abstract concept that begins at retirement. Stability begins when a worker can reliably afford rent, transportation, food, utilities, and healthcare today. If a worker's salary does not cover rising living costs, they are not stable. They are surviving month to month. We must understand that it is unrealistic to depend on pensions and other future-oriented benefits because they are not flexible. They are fixed and therefore will not be able to adjust to future world changes and increases in inflation. You cannot combat something as volatile as inflation with something as stagnant and unmoving as pensions. The best response to a variable problem is something that is as close to volatile and as variable as the problem itself. Therefore, it is a better alternative to supplement the pay with an increase to develop a sort of pay package that can afford the realities of today with enough left to be able to prepare their own private pension plans that can supplement the group pension plans instead of solely relying on the group plans that economists are already warning is unreliable. They also argued that wage increases are inflationary or fiscally irresponsible. And while this may sound economically sophisticated, we must examine it carefully. Inflation already exists. If prices rise whilst wages remain stagnant, what happens? Workers experience a real wage decline. Their purchasing power shrinks every single month. So when proposition says do not prioritize wages, what they're effectively defending is a steady erosion of real income. That is not fiscal responsibility. That is passive income suppression. Government funded benefits are fixed and are far more vulnerable to political shifts, fiscal restructuring, economic downturns, policy reforms. However, immediate wages are certain, future benefits are contingent, and in an uncertain economic environment, certainty must outweigh speculation. The proposition, note also that the proposition's focus on training courses is also unreliable because not everyone can take on a managerial role, and all these courses do is equip them for a situation in which they may or may not get that position, but does nothing for the wage problems that these persons are experiencing in real time, or ensure that they must move up into a higher paying position. Proposition has also noted that these wage increases take time to come into effect, not accepted, which is one, not true because it often takes like a couple of months. But what is a 2-year wait for a sure salary than a 25-year wait for a pension that might not even be there because your employer or the government simply delayed the payment of the pensions until they forgot? Or a training course that will take the same amount of time but has no guarantee that there will be any financial benefit to the worker. My first speaker established that policies based on the Rawls difference principle must prioritize the least advantaged. Let us apply that concretely. Who is the least advantaged worker? It is not the highly paid senior officer planning retirement. It is the entry-level employee living paycheck to paycheck. For that worker, cash is the most flexible primary good. Why? Because money allows choice. It allows the worker to decide whether their most urgent need is food, transport, childcare, debt repayment, or medical expenses. Future-oriented benefits remove that autonomy. They pre-decide what the worker should value. Rawls' difference principle requires us to empower the least advantaged, not to paternalistically decide their priorities. Immediate wage increases maximize flexibility and dignity. Secondly, my first speaker spoke about the economic principle of inflation and time. Economically, a dollar today is worth more than a dollar tomorrow. That is not theoretical, it is observable. Inflation erodes purchasing power. The cost of food, utilities, fuel, and rent increases annually. If wages are not adjusted in real time, workers fall behind. But here is the crucial comparative advantage our side holds. Immediate wage increases raise the base salary, and pensions are typically calculated as a percentage of base salary. This means higher wages today equals higher pension contributions to equal higher retirement benefits. So immediate wage increases do not undermine the future, they strengthen it. Future-oriented benefits, on the other hand, do nothing to solve present hardship. Our model protects both timelines. Theirs sacrifices the present for an uncertain future. My first speaker also spoke on the macroeconomic perspective. Increasing wages directly boosts aggregate demand. Public sector workers, especially lower and middle income earners, have a high marginal propensity to consume. This means they spend most of every extra dollar. That spending circulates in local businesses. It stimulates retail, transport, food services, and informal sectors, and it creates a multiplier effect. When money goes into salaries, it moves through the economy immediately. When money is deferred into future benefits, it is effectively removed from current economic circulation. At a time when economies are trying to recover and stimulate growth, delaying income suppresses demand and slows recovery. Future benefits do not buy groceries today. Future benefits do not pay rent today. And future benefits do not service debt today. Immediate wages stimulate both the worker and the wider economy. Now I turn to my main argument. This debate is not just about economic theory, it is about institutional leverage. When trade unions shift focus away from base salary negotiations, something dangerous happens. Governments begin restructuring compensation into allowances, one-time bonuses, training credits, pension adjustments. And on paper, this looks generous, but structurally, it weakens workers. Why? Because base salary is the anchor of all future bargaining. Base salary determines the trajectory of future raises, the calculation of pension, the value of overtime, the worth of promotions, the compensation for redundancy. If base salary stagnates, the entire compensation structure stagnates. This creates what is called the delayed entitlement trap. Workers are given peripheral benefits while their real wage floor remains suppressed. And once the floor remains low for multiple negotiation cycles, it becomes extremely difficult to raise it significantly later. Immediate wages increases, by contrast, permanently elevate the bargaining baseline. That strengthens union power not just now, but in every future negotiation. Ironically, our model is more long-term strategic than theirs. The mental health implications of financial instability is also critical here. Financial insecurity leads to stress, anxiety, and depression, which in turn can lower productivity and overall well-being. When workers cannot afford basic goods and services, their mental health deteriorates, productivity declines, and financial insecurity creeps into every part of their life. A pension or a future training course will not fix that. In many
And
instances,
that
stress.
is time. Thank you very much. That concludes the second speech from Team St. Jago High School, the team in opposition. The debate is going to go into yet another period of cross-examination. And in so doing, we once again ask the team in opposition, St. Jago High School, to pose their 3 questions to Team Knox College.
Can you hear me?
Mhm. Ready when you are with your first question, St. Jago.
St. Jago supposed to ask the
Do you
first question?
acknowledge that while the cost of living is volatile and rising monthly, pension schemes and training budgets are historically stagnant and slow to change?
This is because we have been consistently lobbying for immediate wage increases first. Because we have not been prioritizing a consistent increase in training opportunities, in the availability of pensions, in government supplying or subsidizing pensions for these workers, we're seeing that these workers are not able to improve or upskill in their positions in the society. You made the contention that not everyone can be a manager, but most people are occupying underpaid positions in underemployed sectors because they do not have the opportunity to upskill at all under your world. In our world, they at least have the opportunity to find themselves in a well-paying position. You don't have that.
Would you concede that immediate wage increases create a multiplier effect that benefits the worker, local businesses, and the broader economy?
It actually has a multiplier effect that increases inflation. As spending throughout the economy increases, so does inflation because demand pull inflation is a thing. As demand increases, businesses and firms will need to increase the prices of their goods so that they can reach equilibrium once again. Under your world, you're actively contending for increased inflation, thereby ensuring that these people consistently have to contend with nominal income depreciating consistently and the real value of the money that they're getting from the wages you're lobbying for, putting them in consistent poverty, in debt, and having it so that they have to lobby once again every year because it is not sufficient and it is not sustainable.
Do you consider that immediate wage increases protect both present consumption and future bargaining power, while the deferred benefits only partially secure the future?
Sorry, I actually didn't hear all of that. Can you repeat it,
Okay,
please?
so do you consider that immediate wage increases protect both present consumption and future bargaining power, while deferred benefits only partially secure the future?
Okay, two things. One, when we say that you are operating in the same time frame, we're reminding you that it takes you process of time for it to secure these wages, and it's because wages are renegotiated in blocks over a multi-year period. That's something that is objectively true. Secondly, when you say that this secures immediate consumption, this isn't true either because these people have to use that to immediately service debts that's like literally created by demand pull inflation because you're increasing the cost of the products that they need to live and survive by increasing demand widespread throughout the economy by supposedly inflating the cost or like by supposedly increasing the cost of their income, which, like I said, not sustainable. These people do still need long-term security. They have automation and AI to contend with. Under your world, they get no protection from this whatsoever.
All right, thank you very much. We now invite the 3 questions to be posed by the proposition team, Knox College.
Okay, one of your main concerns was that these people might not live to experience the full impact of these like long-term solutions. But that goes for wages as well, because trade unions do operate with the idea that these workers will be able to like maintain or like receive the benefits, which could take a multi-year period in many instances.
And your question, Summer Anderson?
Yes, how do you contend with that?
All right. So we're gonna ask you to reframe and to ask again within the 10-second period.
Okay. Under your world, sorry. Yes, under your world, it's still very likely that these people will not receive the benefits of these like wage increases. Similarly, under our world, at least it's more sustainable for them. How is it that you contend with the idea that urgency isn't something that might actually be realized, given the fact that people do still die on both sides?
But what about the people that don't die? I'm not going to wait 25 years for something that is not sustainable long term. Realistically speaking, by the time I get to the pension plan, the money not gonna have no use anymore because inflation has already increased so drastically that the 100,000 that they're promising me today will not be able to buy me a bread in the future. How am I, as an old person who is vulnerable, going to be able to live off something that has no use in a new economic environment? And again, these wage increases do not take the 2 to 3 years or the 5 years that you're saying that they take. They take a few months because, of course, legal processes. But then again, I'm asking you, what is that couple months compared to 25 years where there's no guarantee that it is going to be there for me? Because there has been a case where workers go in and are not able to get their pension without proof that they paid it.
And that is time for your answer elapsed. Your next question, Team Knox.
So most of your case is built on the idea that immediate gratification is better for these individuals. However, how do you contend with the fact that many of these people, majority of them actually aren't in poverty. Majority of them just have to like stretch their budget. They're not in immediate debt. So the people people who don't have that to contend with, and they do benefit more from like sustainable increases, how is it that they benefit under your world?
Right, so firstly, one, in status quo right now, as you said, majority of the workers are having to stretch that monthly pay that they get to cover their basic expenses, meaning that they are still in poverty because they cannot afford to comfortably cover their expenses. For one, what's the second thing she said?
I was also saying that the persons that are mostly benefited from pensions are poor people. So what are you saying? As in, like, yes, rich people have pensions and stuff, but the persons that
it's the poorer class that rely heavily on pensions because, and then again, it's not sustainable. Pensions are not sustainable because the richer class will have supplements towards their pension. The poorer class are relying heavily on the pensions, and it's not able to cover their needs. And that's why in my speech, I would have said that it is better to give them the wage increases so that they can put down the money to supplement it. Because
that is time. That is time. I believe that was indeed the last question from Team Knox, right? Yes, I suspect that is the case. All right. So at this point in time, the debate is going to pause for 1 minute. That 1 minute will allow the finishing touches to be placed on those reply speeches, after which, actually, Team Knox.
They have one last question.
Yes, there we go. Your third and final question, please, Team Knox.
Okay, so when you talk about immediate benefit of cash, are you aware that immediate wage increases are actually taxed at like the highest marginal rates?
Repeat, we didn't hear the last part.
When you talk about like the immediate tax relief, sorry, the immediate income relief, are you aware of the fact that wage increases are actually taxed at the highest marginal rate in Jamaica?
Yes, but now they have more money to spend on themselves. Now they have more disposable income.
All right, and that therefore concludes the period of cross-examination. As I was indicated earlier, the debate is now going to enter into a brief 1 minute pause, and that pause will allow for the debaters to finish their reply speeches. That 1 minute break starts now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we now invite the third and final speaker from Team St. Jago High School to take the stage to conclude the case on behalf of Team Opposition. That speaker, of course, being Anna Governor Morrison.
Turn on your camera.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are. Ready when you are, Anna.
Judges, be reminded that there are certain burdens that need to be fulfilled in this match, and the team you give your vote for ought to be the team that fulfills the burdens. Our first opposition pointed out to you that this match is about what will bring the best benefit for the citizens, and so the winning team is a team that shows the citizens stand to gain gain the most from the negotiation priority of the trade unions. To be clear, focusing on pensions and other futuristic measures is a win for the government, but focusing on variable and day-to-day benefits that counter bad things like inflation, which by the way is constantly changing, affecting people's life, is beneficial to the people. Secondly, the team that wins today is the team that can show the approach to solving the problem of future planning is more feasible. Their solution to provide the power to control my future comfort to the government or the employer, whereas we argue that status quo is sufficient as a base starter for the employees. But what needs to be fixed is a culture of saving and effective family planning and good financial practices on the part of the individuals themselves, and providing more avenues for them to handsomely supplement their pensions and estate plans in the best way to give them agency for future protections while at the same time protecting themselves today. First, judges, we show you that on economic basis, the proposition's case falls short on leading to the greatest good for the union members. Make no mistake about its judges. Government and employers have a vested interest in avoiding the day-to-day working conditions improvements because they will save from it, whereas their workers continue to struggle. The proposition says training will bring an immediate increase in wage, but training does not mean that you will get the job immediately and a wage increase immediately. This is a notion line where the mission of a trade union, especially since a trade union meets the needs of its membership most effectively, as they can lobby successfully for the day-to-day work-life improvement. Pensions and these other estate planning benefits tend to be very fixed in nature. This means that what you plan for is exactly what you get when the time comes decades into the future. But by that time, inflation would have already taken its toll on the economy, and what 10 years ago would thought to be enough for people to live off is grossly inadequate. You think the people collecting pensions now didn't think 20 years ago when they joined the scheme were not convinced it would be sufficient? That was the whole reason why they entered the scheme. But since Russia has invaded Ukraine, putting hard pressure on the entire world's food security, the US military invaded Venezuela and seized its oil reserves and are not positioned to control the global oil market, sending costs of electricity, food, and shorts of other things into chaos. All this means that not only will $80,000 be meaningless 20 years later when it costs you 95,000 to live, you'll be struggling to make ends meet right this very moment. But when you focus on prioritizing variable benefits to trade unions negotiation, at least people still have some pension that they can contribute from. But their income and the value of money today will appreciate in a way that makes them able to stand the pressure of inflation now and control how much they can save for the future to come. They can reasonably and at will decide that they need and can afford to invest more in the future because they can afford it now. But in propositions where whatever the employer agrees you can survive off in the future, they can't see. That's exactly why you will have to survive off with no way to supplement that because your wage negotiations are on the back burner. Who really benefits from proposition's case in the government who will save the future because what they spend on the agreed upon pension are far below the inflation rate. And they save now because they don't have the burden of worrying about those payments in the immediate time. Double win for the government, double double whammy for the citizens. Pensions are a set thing. If you are getting a set amount of money, say $100 tomorrow, the price of bread increased to the same amount and you cannot afford it. Whereas prices increase and wages increase, allowing persons to plan for their future effectively and limit financial strain. You cannot plan for a future that is uncertain. Moreover, we say that this is an added benefit for the employees themselves because it encourages them, not the government, to engage in responsible financial practices while keeping their agency. The problem is our people are relying on others to do the right thing for them, and that doesn't fix their thinking. Leave, the, leave them with some agency to impact their own futures while at the same time allowing them that agency means that they can choose better packages that adequately supports the accommodations of the employer.
And thank you very much. That was the third and final speaker for St. Jago, Anna Governor. At this point in time, to conclude this debate, we invite the third speaker from Team Knox College, that is Summer Anderson.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, can we have new points in our third speech, or should it only be extensions? Extension. Okay. All right. All right. I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1. So first, let us begin by re-establishing the guiding principle throughout this debate. We have a limited constraint. That means prioritization of the better alternative is necessary in order to maximize benefits for these workers. So what determines the better alternative? We as proposition have told you that it is what truly protects these workers in the long term. So we heard from opposition that there's urgency and the need for survival is imminent, that we have supposed inefficiencies with these long-term solutions, and therefore that denigrates our sides and the validity of our points. However, Mr. Speaker, we'd like to remind them of two things. One, we are living in their world. The structural issues that they're describing, the wage issues they're describing, poverty that they're describing is the influence of their policies, their focus on immediate wage like lobbying. The result of this is that people are consistently living day to day their thinking of survival, and none of them can extend or achieve their full potential under opposition's world. Two, we are operating in the same time frame. Although opposition would like to lie to you and tell you that's not the case, wages are renegotiated in blocks. It is a multi-year process. It can take up to 2 to 3 years, and although we don't say they don't get anything for 2 to 3 years, it is undeniable that it takes a period of time for these to be fully realized under their side. Therefore, it is objective that we are working with similar time constraints. If it is the case, then, Mr. Speaker, we need to contend with their fundamental misunderstanding of economic principles. Mr. Speaker, on our side, we did multiple things. Under their side, they fundamentally relied on the idea that inflation would concede to their principles, would lend to their ideas, and allow for wages to increase and allow for spending and income value to increase if wages increase. Economics tells you that this is not the reality, and we have told you this in excruciating detail. When wages increase, the values of goods increase. Demand pull inflation insists that the prices of goods and services throughout the economy increases simultaneously in order to achieve equilibrium throughout the society. They did not contend with this, Mr. Speaker. Additionally, we have the issue of the multiplier effect. That's what they gave you as a substantiation for economics under their side. Mr. Speaker, supposedly, if you continue to spend, this benefit trickles down all throughout the economy. That's not true. What happens is demand pull inflation. Again, they did not contend with this. On our side, we described multiple things that they either did not poorly mechanize on in a rebuttal, or they simply did not address. They were blind to the idea that trade unions are rapidly deteriorating in their ability to address many of these wage issues. As they consistently lobby for wage increases, they're depreciating on their bargaining power. Less people are putting their faith in these trade unions, and on our side, we secure this. We address the structural issues with the trade unions by finding individuals who are actively in search of long-term security. The young people who are underemployed are better secured under our front. And these people then secure positions in trade unions and continue with the lobbying process. Under our side, we have long-term trade union security, we have increased bargaining power, and we have the capacity to lobby thereafter continuously for whatever it is that these workers need, but they don't have that. What they have is continued depreciation, and they have no methodology to fix this. They do not even contend with it as an argument because their side bank completely on the idea that that immediate gratification was what these individuals needed all throughout the society. They introduced the Rawlsian principle to substantiate their points, the idea that who we should focus on is the person who is most mitigated, most at risk, and most likely to be most vulnerable in the society. We agree that these individuals are vulnerable. We just don't think they benefit from their side. These individuals continue to remain vulnerable under their principles, under their stance. They're consistently living paycheck to paycheck. As their wages increase, so does the inflation throughout the economy, almost immediately or almost as a direct result of. On our side, however, with the same time constraints, we at the very least ensure that these individuals secure training opportunities, and we ensure that their pensions are better secured. We tell you that pensions are specifically for the old individuals within the society, Jamaica's aging workforce, who retires without sustainable pensions and forces them to retire without dignity, living day to day, begging on the streets. That is the reality we have shown you. We tell you again, they contended with barely any of our points. Their points were poorly organized, and they relied on a fundamental misunderstanding of basic economic principles. We tell you, on our side, many people are protected. We tell you that these vulnerable workers get long-term security, long-term stability. More than that, Mr. Speaker, not only do they get long-term stability, they also get protection from automation improvements and the risk of AI overreaching and taking their skilled positions because they did not have the ability to upscale due to the training risk or the devaluing of training under their perspective. Again, they did not contend with this. In fact, they conceded to this directly by admitting to the fact that trade unions do not adequately focus on training, and as a result of this, workers do not have many training opportunities. We told you we could mitigate this if this was the focus under our side. For all what we're seeing is from opposition, a poor focus on a result, a misunderstanding of economic principles, and the idea that urgency is sufficient enough to safeguard these individuals when inflation keeps on mitigating the true value of their income over time. Mr. Speaker, look for sustainability because these people are not living a life that is these people are not living in the status quo with a life that continues to allow for them to have a standard quality of life, to enjoy life beyond the very bare minimum because of the constraints opposition has put in place.
And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this match of the Jamaica Civil Service Association High Schools Debate Competition for 2025. The judges have heard a lot, and at this point in time, we're going to excuse ourselves to another space and return to you shortly with the outcome of this match.